The Lord be with you.
And with you.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. The 11 disciples went to Galilee, to the mountain to which Jesus had ordered them. When they all saw him, they worshipped, but they doubted. Then Jesus approached and said to them, "All power in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Go, therefore, and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you. And behold, I am with you always, until the end of the age." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. When we gather together to celebrate the Eucharist, especially every Sunday, we celebrate first and foremost the Paschal mystery of Christ. For each Sunday is, as it were, a little Easter, a commemoration of the resurrection of Jesus from the dead, of his Passover from death to life, and of our sharing in this mystery through baptism. Our celebration today, however, focuses not so much upon the person of Jesus and his Paschal mystery as upon an idea, a doctrine, a mystery of our faith, the most holy Trinity. The doctrine of the Trinity came to be explicitly formulated only in the 4th and 5th centuries of the Christian era. It is summarized in the Apostles' Creed and the Nicene Creed, which we recite together every Sunday here at Mass. In that creed, we profess our belief in one God, the Father Almighty. We believe in Jesus Christ, God from God, consubstantial with the Father. And we believe in God, the Holy Spirit, who with the Father and the Son is worshiped and glorified. One God in 3 persons, 3 divine persons, each distinct from the other, yet all 3 sharing the same divine nature. Now, while the doctrine of the Trinity is fairly easy to state, it is far more difficult to understand or fully comprehend. I think it's important for us to note that the doctrine of the Trinity is not explicitly or formally a biblical belief. For example, the word Trinity never appears in the Bible. I was questioned about this once by a young man, a Jehovah's Witness, whom I was preparing to marry a Roman Catholic. In one of our meetings, he brought in his Jehovah's Witness Bible, and in the back, it had a glossary. And there the word Trinity appeared. And the glossary stated that the word Trinity is a made-up word by the Catholic Church and is not biblical at all. Well, I explained to this young man that though the word Trinity never appears explicitly in the Bible, the doctrine, one God in 3 divine persons, is nevertheless implicit, especially in the New Testament. That there is one God and no other gods is clearly taught in the Old Testament. I'm reminded of this every time I pass the large statue of Moses outside the west entrance to the Hesburgh Library. Perhaps you've seen it. In his right hand, Moses is holding 2 tablets containing the 10 Commandments. His left hand is held on high with his index finger extended. Now, many a visitor to campus might think that Moses is clearly pointing out that Notre Dame, you got it, is number 1. Sadly, no. Rather, Moses is indicating by this gesture what he says to the people in this morning's passage from the book of Deuteronomy, that there is only one God. The Lord is God. There is no other. While the Old Testament stresses that there is only one God, we find in the New Testament not the word Trinity, but numerous references to 3 persons in this one God. In our passage, for example, this morning from Paul's letter to the Romans, Christian revelation unfolds in all its fullness. God is the Father of Jesus Christ, his only Son, and it is the Spirit who makes us children of the Father and thus co-heirs with the Son. Perhaps the most explicit reference in the New Testament to the Trinity can be found in our gospel passage today from St. Matthew. At the end of his gospel, Jesus appears to the 11 apostles after his resurrection and tells them to go and baptize all nations in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. By being baptized into the Trinity, we have been given over to Christ, consecrated to him, made children of the Father, and given the gift of the Holy Spirit. Now, as I mentioned earlier, though the doctrine of the Trinity can be stated fairly easily, our belief in the Trinity, after all is said and done, remains a mystery, which theologians through the centuries have pondered and marveled at. But does that mean that this doctrine has no meaning for our lives? Just the opposite. The fundamental truth of the Trinity is that 3 persons, each distinct, yet sharing the same divine nature, live in a community of mutual love and trust, mutual respect. And it is in this image of God that each of us has been created. To the extent, then, that we fail to live together as a community, to the extent that we fail to love one another, to the extent that we fail to respect the other, we fail to image the God in whose likeness we have been created. When I live, for example, as an isolated individual, thinking only of myself and my career, I fail to image the God in whose likeness I have been created. When I hate or despise or ridicule others, when I demean others, when I label others or are intolerant of others, I fail to image the God in whose likeness I have been created. When love gives way to anger, to shouting, to harsh language, to bitterness, to abuse, to infidelity, to a refusal to forgive, I fail to image the community of the love of the triune God, in whose image I have been created. Now, for many, the Trinity will remain simply an abstract dogma which defies explanation and intelligibility, and which has little, if any, meaning in their daily lives. But for others, hopefully for each one of us, it speaks to who God is and how we are to be like this God, in whose image we have been created. A community of persons filled with mutual respect and love for one another.